All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're still continuing this conversation. We're calling it State of the Nation. We're talking matters, politics, and everything in between there. We started with the Inside the Uhuru's deal on Ugali, but there's a lot of tweets coming through on this. Let's bring that up and see what you're saying. At Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. Teardrop says, good morning, Trevor. In 2017, that is William Ruto in 2017 talked about unga prices and promising to fix the price. Today, he's accusing state for using unga to play politics. He's the biggest hypocrite, okay? Bobo Tieno says body language of millers and government officials at State House clearly indicated that unga price reduction won't be sustainable. Okay? Okelo Mwalimu says if it's indeed true that the DP is confident of winning presidency, why is he so restless, so angry, and so careless with his choice of words? Let me tell his supporters the truth. Ruto has realized that there's no way he'll become president. Okay, personal views coming through there. Bobo Tino Wino says it is easier said than done. Unga prices won't be reduced soon. What about other commodities like sugar, cooking oil? Their prices are skyrocketing too. And not forgetting the cost of fuel, which is the main reason of high prices, remains untouched. Okay? Charlotte Rosie says reducing the price of maize flour to 100 shillings is not an issue. The issue is sustainability. For how long will it retail at that price? Long-lasting solutions need to be put in place as far as food issue is concerned. The cost of living is very high and Kenyans are tired. So see, this is something that Bashir brought up. The Parliament, what did you do? Not you as a person, but Parliament, the legislature. What did you do to cushion Kenyans from the rising cost of living?
I think when you try to push it to Parliament, we are dealing with a matter that now rests and resides squarely at the executive. This is a matter of the executive. Execution of government activities, government policies rest with the executive. The role of Parliament is to make legislation. At no time has Parliament impeded the executive from implementing programs that would ensure that food productivity is sustained in the country. Parliament has not stopped the executive from ensuring that fertilizer subsidies are enforced in the country. In fact, if anything, if you remember the finance bill that was brought to Parliament under the presidential reservation, and there was pandemonium in Parliament in introducing VAT on fuel, Parliament was concerned unanimously that this is going to push the cost of living. It is going to push the cost of fuel. It is going to push the cost of everything in the country. And this has come to pass. I was a member of the 12th Parliament. And I remember Parliament stood and rejected unanimously the presidential recommendation of the VAT reservation that was brought back to Parliament. But in its characteristic nature of state capture, that matter was mischievously taken away by the state. And so this is a situation where you have not allowed institutions to operate independently. Because the executive, at a certain point, are interested in collecting taxes. And they foreseen certain recommendations, which, of course, Parliament stood against it. But, of course, within the rules of what you call presidential reservation. Because when a president, if a bill is brought in by government and is rejected by Parliament, and the president brings it back under what you call presidential reservation, you can only defeat it with what you call two-thirds rule. It's not a simple majority. And I remember very vividly that the entire Parliament was concerned about that recommendation of raising the VAT. And this has come to pass. We are now seeing whatever is done, even with these subsidies. You are not going to subsidize maize today, and you are not going to subsidize maize every month, because you are subsidizing maize through the collection of taxes. You are not going to subsidize cooking oil. You are not going to subsidize beans. You are not going to subsidize milk. You are not going to subsidize sugar. You are not going to subsidize soap. Because everything has been pushed up. So I think the buck stops squarely with the executive. And that is why there is what we call leadership. The role of Parliament is to facilitate through legislation And that parliament has done it well.
Okay.
We have the laws in place. We have the laws in place.
Yeah.
And we have a president in place. And we have the executive in place.
Okay.
And so the ball stops squarely at the executive.
Okay, let me bring it to Brito. Can we squarely say that the National Cereals and Produce Board has failed Kenyans?
Well, that will be isolating an institution that is a victim at the receiving end. What has happened is that Uhuru Ruto government, and that's why it is convenient for the Honorable Sossion to look at Uhuru and ignore the fact that even today, as we are talking, William Ruto is the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. And their policies that they funneled out in 2017 should have been able to take us to a safer ground, given the fact that the Horn of Africa, and these are fundamental facts, the Horn of Africa is a food deficit area, and it is not throughout. One time a country has good harvest, the next time that country does not have good harvest. That's why it is common knowledge and it is not a crime to import maize from Tanzania or from Uganda, because there is a certain percentage that is known as cross-border business that takes place throughout the year, whether the government does import or other institutions, including individuals. These borders are porous. We do not have any restriction 100% for people to go to Tanzania and import maize. The second issue, which is also fundamental, is that for the last 5 years we've had this problem. And the government of Kenya 3 years ago should have been able to suck in all the maize that was harvested by ensuring they offer good prices and they keep them in better storage facilities.
Yeah.
Because under National Cereals and Produce Board, you can store under optimal conditions up to five years maize. But if you leave it to the farmers, the post-harvest losses for maize is up to 30%. If you leave it to the farmers because of the vermins and other vagaries of weather within the farming system. But if you are able to take it to National Cereals and Produce Board and store, that is a better way of ensuring that we have sustainable food security.
So then
during my tenure, we had even what we call some receipting, where you as Trevor, you can take your 3,000 bags of maize to National Cereals and Produce Board, and you are given some receipt that if should you want to take it away from National Cereals and Produce Board, you just present the receipt and you are given back your maize. That ensured that there was better storage of maize. And I told you, when I left the ministry, we had 8 million bags under National Cereals and Produce Board within 1 year. When William Ruto was the minister, that maize was sold kiolela-holela to some funny millers. And that is what occasioned the transfer of William Ruto from the Ministry of Agriculture to Ministry of Higher Education.
Yeah.
These are some of the facts that we need to roll over and take care of, so that we do not create an illusion that there is an angel on the other side of the fence. There is a fundamental problem. As long as we keep money with the hope that we'll cushion the consumer or the farmer during crisis, instead of presenting a situation that you store maize in the form that is supposed to be stored for purposes of stabilizing, that we will not be able to resolve the problem. Finally, on this particular issue, National Cereals and Produce Board has 3 purposes. 1 is stabilization of the market. 2 is releasing for famine relief, what the Honorable Sossion was mentioning. He only remembered during Maize regime, he forgot that the 10 years of Kibaki, that famine relief was still a sustainable thing that was being to assist some farmers in some of the deprived areas. Now, why the third one is the commercialization of it, the window of commercialization. Should you have enough for famine relief, you have enough for strategic grain reserve, you can also have it as a commercial commodity. These are some of the issues that we must engage as a country. Otherwise, the blame game is likely to be there again and again and again.
Okay.
Remember what William Ruto was saying 5 years ago about the same issue. He was now talking like the way President Uhuru Kenyatta is talking. But today, he has taken the other side because it is convenient to blame it on the government, and it's also convenient to take credit where you have not invested. I have not seen him as a serious person when it comes to sustainable food security of this country.
All right. Bashir?
I think, Trevor, when it comes to food security, it's about the lives of the people of Kenya. You know, when we bring in the aspect of politics, it will be tantamount to toying with the lives of the people. And I think in 18 days, the people of Kenya will have an opportunity to again audit and see who can address the question of food security in our country. In every manifesto, you know, we are shown food security becomes one of the greatest pillars in that manifesto. It becomes the greatest objectives that these presidential candidates contend to maybe achieve in a span of 5 years. But I think the people of Kenya, in as much as the food prices were reduced the other day, the people of Kenya were told by the president, unga prices will be reduced from 200 shillings to 100 shillings. Nobody has told them, if you vote for person X, the price of unga will be there. There were no conditions, just to be honest about it. There is no point of politicizing this. The people of Kenya were just told by the president, we are reducing this from this to this. The big question is the sustainability of this particular relief. That is the big question. But the aspect of saying that this is now to campaign for the other side of the political fold, I think that's a misplaced question.
Okay.
No person has told the people of Kenya, vote for Honorable Raila Odinga. That is why I'm reducing the food prices. I think, Trevor, on the other part, the reason as to why I was trying to blame Parliament is our Parliament is so powerful, such that it is not about legislation as such, it's about oversight. I do not have the opportunity to question the CS for Agriculture. I cannot call Honorable Munya. My member of Parliament can write a question through the office of the Leader of Majority to summon the CS and pose the necessary questions to him so that we get the rightful answers. The same Parliament whereby we have elected the leaders have the opportunity and the power to impeach the President in the event the President is not delivering to the people of Kenya. If you have a President who has not delivered to the people of Kenya 3 years ago, were you sleeping in that house? You should have done the necessary thing, you know, even as a parliamentarian, if in as much as you might think that because of the politics around the house, you know, for me, my opinion is when we talk about the leaders we are elected into office, it is no longer about their political parties. When we talk about food security, it should not be about the political party that has sponsored them to the house. It is about the people, the lives of their constituents. And I think that is the time they should shun the political lines and engage in a common objective, maybe to put the necessary oversight on the executive. So I think we have another opportunity to see who will be the next person who will be in the Senate, who is the next person who will be calling that CS. Question him on how he's going to address the long term of it. You know, for us, if we have a cabinet secretary appearing before a committee of the House telling the Parliament that this will be the long-term plan and this will be the short-term plan, at least as a country we shall have a conversation to talk about. But for now, I think unfortunately what we have is a scenario by on the political podiums, we have leaders who are now telling us, look, the prices are now have been reduced to 100 shillings because so-and-so wants you to vote for so-and-so. In fact, we shall clap for the president at the moment and request him to look into the prices of the other commodities. For us, let us audit the crop of leaders we are electing. Let us have good leaders who question, in as much as it might be Professor Wajakoya or President Ruto or President Raila as the next leader of our country, so that that person will be put on light. That person shall have, for the entire 5 years, addressing this issue. It should not be an issue that we are looking at just towards the last term of the last round of the term in office. It's quite unfortunate for me. But I hope to have a Kenya whereby we shall have a good exit strategy. What matters to us is the exit strategy out of this, the long-term bit of it. Let us avoid the politics around it.
Okay. So, Sion, is it just institutional failure? Kipruto says we can't squarely lay this on the doorstep of the National Cereals and Produce Board, but at the same time, he says that they can have grain reserves of up to 5 years. Why don't they have it?
I think, Trevor, this is all about leadership. Everything here
the executive
down,
that is both President Uhuru Kenyatta and
the executive, and don't say both. The government belongs to President Uhuru Kenyatta. That's a fact, and this is the fourth president of
and the president has a
Republic.
principal assistant, sir.
Allow me to prosecute. It's my turn. You'll have your turn. We know William Ruto has been pushed out of government. That's a fact for sure. But now, as my colleagues are stating here, we are going for an election. And however much we discuss the problems of Kenyans, the problems of Kenyans are numerous and many. One of them is the challenge of food sustainability and production in the country. I wonder how it will look like with the global economic meltdown when it hits Kenya. in the coming days, because that is, and Kenya has been listed as one of the countries that's at risk of being hit by the global economic meltdown.
Yeah.
And we've seen what has happened in Sri Lanka, citizens rising. All these, it requires very serious leadership. And that is why going to 9th of August, the solution to all this is a ballot box. And Kenyans now have an opportunity to deal with this at the ballot box. And I can tell you very clearly, if you look at what Kenya Kwanza has been speaking about, what Kenya Kwanza has been working on, what Kenya Kwanza has diagnosed as a major problem of this country, in terms of resolving the issues concerning agriculture. Agriculture is a key economic sector in this country that can generate employment, that can produce enough food. In fact, Kenya as a country should be able to produce enough food to feed the citizens and to export. Because when we are talking of importing maize now, simply because we did not protect the farmer within the country, and we did not support the farmer to produce so that we can store enough. We've had, Kirwa has told us, at some point there were 8 million reserves of grains. You see, we are talking now about unga being assembled in the shops. We are not talking about 60% of Kenyans who are living below poverty line, who cannot even afford this unga, who ought to be on free, direct relief in the country. So the country cannot assemble flour on the shelves. And the country does not even have enough reserve for relief for 60% of Kenyans who cannot buy. So all this is about leadership. And the only solution is we need a president who will focus on agriculture as a key security sector above security in the country. Okay. That we must deliberately bring down the cost of fertilizers to around to 2,000 or even below. That we must bring down the cost of all other farm inputs. That we must give farmers minimum guarantee in what they are producing. That is the only way you can, the only thing you can do is to protect the farmer. And this, as I said earlier on, is within the SDG framework. Number 2, that all governments must endeavor to ensure that the countries produce and sustain food production within themselves. So this is the master plan of Kenya Kwanza. Yeah. And Kenya Kwanza has deliberately identified programs in the entire agricultural sector and within all the counties, and that we will put money to all these programs and protect the farmers. And in that way, Kenya Kwanza will ensure that, yeah, that's the truth, it's a fact, and we'll do it. Yeah. And we are taking government, that's a fact for sure, that we will be able to produce enough and store in the national grain reserves. Yeah. Probably we might need to surpass the 8 million and do even more, better than that. Once we do that, then, Trevor, the only solution is to work on agriculture. And once we do that, then we will not need these subsidies to inject into the sector. We must produce enough to feed the population and also to export. And that's why we are talking about not only production, we are talking about agro-processing, value addition, and real big-time investment in the agricultural sector is a major flagship of Kenya Kwanza. And any government anywhere in the world will always focus on in protecting the farmers and protecting agriculture. We
spent enough time on this, but Honorable Kiro, I'd like to come to you to give us the lasting solutions, because you've been at the helm of this ministry before. What would be the lasting solution going forward?
Well, without infusing politics into it, let me just say I want to thank the Honorable Sossion, because what he's saying is actually picking it from our manifesto. We are talking of guaranteed minimum returns. 2,500 is what our party presidential candidate has said for fertilizer, 50 kilos. One enterprise per county is a way of trying to ensure that every county has something that is sustainable. But the most important thing is what I call full chain, where you are talking from seed to seed. When you plant a seed, you want that seed to go all the way to the table of the farmer or the consumer. Now, a more sustainable way is to use the basic understanding that we know. One is to do proper crop zoning. This country is gifted differently, or enterprise zoning. In some of the areas, like where our Gutu Akili comes from, you can have the best goats and sheep, or the best goats for that matter. When you come down to Kambani, you can have fruits and other enterprises. But what has happened in Kenya is that we just plant maize all over. There are some regions which can do well for maize. There are some regions which don't do well for maize, but they have other crops which are alternative. When you go to South Nyanza and the lower western, you can have cotton and other enterprises, and now the government seems to be building that particular fund, such that we have what we call food security.
Yeah.
Food security means you have enough in a sustainable manner, in the right nutritional value, and you have a source to afford it. Otherwise, it is not about planting maize, maize, maize. Where tea does well, you can have enough food security in that area by ensuring that you get money to assist you.
Yeah.
Now, the second issue is to give the farmer the right incentives by giving them good prices and ensuring the surplus they produce is stored so that we don't waste, what I was calling post-harvest losses. Finally, is for us to understand that if you are not able to feed your people, you are likely to run the risk of creating more problems in the country. There is no country that is not able to feed its people that they can say we are secure enough.
Yeah. But when you left the ministry, did we have a list of who the millers are? Because now they're complaining and saying that the government now wants them to register with the Agriculture and Food Authority. The small-scale millers are saying they'll be left out of this subsidy.
Well, the issue is that when there is a crisis, many people want to take advantage of that. Otherwise, the millers were known. We knew who the serious millers were, the main ones, and we also knew there are some small-scale millers within the villages. But the subsidy must also be demonstrated by the fact that we subsidize for what we have produced. So if they are able to produce and demonstrate that we have produced so many bags of maize and we have taken to the market, that is something that needs to be considered.
Okay.
But also, advice to the government is what the Honorable Soshan was saying. There are people, even if you are to take it to 5 shillings or 50 shillings, it will not be possible. We need to think of a window or famine relief to some of the vulnerable of our society.
All right. There's still many other issues that I'd like us to touch on before we move on, but Bashir, you want to jump onto this?
I think one of